Hello everyone, I'm Ashton Westrup Evans and today is February 2nd, 2025. It's now 485 days that Hamas are holding hostages captive in Gaza. Some 79 remain in the terror dungeons, some alive, others not. This is a live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's office. Now, would you accept child murdering terrorists living next door to your children? Well, on October 7th, Hamas ripped 9-month-old Kfir Bibas and 4-year-old Ariel from their home together with their mother Shiri. Then, Hamas thought it would be fun to film themselves posing with these stolen children. Their father, Yarden, thought he would be saving his babies by giving himself up. And Yarden Bibas was finally released from Hamas captivity this last Saturday, alone, without his family. Yarden spoke about how during his nearly 500 days of captivity, Hamas taunted him, telling him his wife and children were murdered. And the Bibas children are only representative of all the children who were murdered and harmed during the horrors of October 7th and in the time since. Hamas kidnapped 15-week-old Eshel and 4-year-old Negev Kaplun. Hamas kidnapped 3-year-old Yael Shoam and 8-year-old Naveh along with their parents. 9-month-old Mila Cohen was murdered, shot dead with her father in Kibbutz Be'eri by Hamas. 2-year-old Omer Kedem Simantov was found burned, murdered at Nir Oz. So were his 5-year-old twin sisters, Shahar and Arbel, along with their parents. 5-year-old Eitan Kafshida and his 8-year-old sister Aline were murdered with their parents when Hamas fired an anti-tank rocket at their car. There are more, and hostage ransom deals do not change these atrocities. Israel's children cannot sleep safely in their beds if Hamas child murderers are living next door. And it's not just Israel. The US also doesn't tolerate jihadi terror regimes. That's why the US struck Islamic State in Somalia thousands of miles from its borders. The US has previously hit Islamic State around the world, including in Syria and Iraq, and the US also recently hit Iran-backed Shia jihadis just across the Red Sea, the Houthi terror pirates in Yemen. The US strikes the jihadis because they say they want to destroy the US, and they keep trying to. Israel faces Hamas jihadis not thousands of miles away, but right on our borders. And Hamas jihadis also say they want to destroy Israel, and they also keep trying to. Hamas promises to do October 7 massacres again and again if they have the opportunity, and no country can tolerate living alongside those who seek to enact terror upon their people. The US doesn't want jihadis across the globe, and Israel certainly cannot have them across the border next door. And that's precisely one of the things that will be discussed in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is traveling to meet US President Donald Trump. Now, this is the first meeting President Trump will have with a foreign leader since his inauguration. And the meeting will focus on Hamas, Iran, regional instability, and getting back the remaining Israeli hostages. The US has taken a clear stance against the Hamas murderers and their Iranian backers. And the rest of the world must stand with Israel against those who want to burn the whole region and cause global instability. Otherwise, we'll again be dousing the flames of terror, perhaps next month, perhaps next year, and certainly into the future. All right, let's take questions from our audience watching live on social media.
Thank you, Asher. Our first question comes from many people on Instagram. Many want to know, is there any news on the rest of the Bibas family?
Sadly, as the situation stands right now, what I spoke about just earlier, Yarden Bibas was informed while he was in captivity by Hamas that the rest of his family were no longer alive. Now, this hasn't been independently verified by the IDF or any other official Israeli sources, but it is the line that Hamas is sticking to. Hamas like to claim that the Bibas family, Shiri, Ariel, and Kfir were killed in an IDF airstrike. But frankly, those heinous murderers cannot be seen as reliable sources. They took this poor young family hostage. We have the footage of that occurring indisputably, of Hamas taking them hostage in Gaza, holding these infants and their mother captive for so long. We can only hope and pray that there is some life from that family. But as it stands right now, the situation does not look good for Kfir, Ariel, and Shiri. Unfortunately, this is the reality on the ground, and until we know more, this is the information we have to work with.
Thank you. Our next question comes from X. Can you please update us on the situation in Lebanon?
Well, taking a look at Lebanon right now, Israel and the IDF have said that they are unable to pull back from the southern parts of Lebanon to give back the area that was supposed to be agreed to under the ceasefire, because frankly, Hezbollah is still operating in that region. As we saw just a couple of days ago, when reconnaissance drones launched by Hezbollah were shot down by the IDF. The IDF was forced to strike in the Bekaa Valley, where Hezbollah are known to operate, and they've been unable to move out of southern Lebanon in order to return it to the control of the Lebanese army, as was agreed to under the original propositions of the ceasefire back in November. The delays in terms of the ceasefire have been put in place until the middle of February, but as it stands for the time being, unless the Lebanese army can take control, unless Hezbollah can be put down and not be allowed to return back to the border region and threaten the lives and safety of so many Israelis who live in the north of Israel and frankly the rest of the country, Israel is not going to cede back the risk that these militant jihadists will be returned back to the border, will take these sort of defensive positions that threaten Israel so much. We cannot return to the status quo we saw prior to October 7th. It is not October 6th, 2023 anymore. This is the new reality, and the IDF is living in this reality until such time as Hezbollah can be taken under control.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Benji on Instagram. They ask, what do you think will be discussed in the meetings between President Trump and Bibi Netanyahu?
Well, this meeting, as I said earlier, the first foreign leader to be formally meeting with new US President Donald Trump, likely to be a wide-ranging one, of course. Under the first Trump administration, the Abraham Accords, which saw normalization of ties with a number of Israel's neighbors, the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco. This is likely to be back on the cards, back on the menu, as it were. There is conversation about expanding the Abraham Accords to include Saudi Arabia. There's been initial reports of Qatar being involved in any potential expansion. Who knows for sure, but certainly what we do know based on what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Trump have said is that it is likely that they will talk about regional stability, Iran, of course, and their destabilizing force within the region, Hamas and what to do with them, how the Hamas-Israel ceasefire can be expanded, and how this ransom deal, frankly, that is fortunately helping to return some hostages back to Israel can be extended so that we can get all our hostages back from the Hamas terrorists. Likely to be a wide-ranging conversation. Will remains to be seen what will truly come out of it, but hopefully it can be productive in boosting and strengthening the ties between the US and Israel, and showing those militant destabilizing groups that this relationship is strong and will remain strong.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Renee on Instagram. How will Israel protect its people from all the horrific terrorists being released in the West Bank?
Renee, it's a critical question here. I mean, obviously, as we've seen, for every one Israeli hostage that gets released by the Hamas militant terrorists, 30 to 50 terrorists are being released out of Israeli prisons to go back onto the streets and cause unknown havoc. Unfortunately, when you live in a society that praises life and cares so much about the lives of our people as much as we do in Israel, this is the situation that we found ourselves in because we want to see our people returned. What these terrorists will then go on to do, who's to say? I mean, this is exactly the sort of situation that Israel has been forced into in the past. Fortunately, the IDF security apparatus and the security apparatus of all of Israel are prepared to take on the defense of the nation, as we have shown ourselves incredibly capable to do since October 7th. This is critical. This is paramount. Israel will do whatever it can to ensure that its people are safe, to ensure that people can live their lives in safety and freedom, and to ensure that the terrorists next door do not upset and upend the lives of Israelis as they did on October 7th.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Instagram. We're seeing a lot of reports from the released hostages that they were held both by quote-unquote Gazan civilians and Hamas terrorists. Is it possible to destroy Hamas, and are there genuine peace partners in Gaza?
I'll take that even a step further and point out that it was not only civilians and terrorists, but also, as Emily Damari stated, that hostages were actually being held in UNRWA facilities, inside UN facilities, meaning that these facilities were potentially being used as bases of Hamas militant activity in ways that even Israel didn't conceive to be possible, even though it is well known that Hamas uses this UN UNRWA infrastructure. This is the key thing. This is why this battle in Gaza has been one of the most heinous, battles in modern warfare. Israel is attempting to, as carefully and considerately as it can, to peel out the Hamas terror elements from within the Gazan population. But this is a challenging battlefield. Hamas, as we've seen, fights not in uniform, but rather in civilian garb, pretending just to be members of the Gazan population. Only when they have their heinous and sick little ceremonies as they release Israeli hostages do they bother to put on their uniforms when they know they're protected, standing next to hostages. This is when they choose to show their true colors. But when it comes to the battlefield, they hide, they obfuscate, they put themselves in harm's way, put their civilians in harm's way at their expense. So we only hope that Hamas will lay down their own arms and the people of Gaza will tell them they are no longer welcome, because that is the only way it seems we're going to be able to truly remove this sick infection that is Hamas, not just from Gaza, but from the region as a whole.
Thank you. Ben on Instagram is asking, can you please update us on the IDF operation in Samaria?
Ben, there are ongoing operations all throughout the West Bank, as we've seen. There is a lot of activity that is happening within that region at the moment. As it stands, as we've said, with militants being released, with ongoing activity, this forms one of the 7 fronts that Israel is facing and having to fight, across the entire region. There are militants on all sides with ill intent who would seek to destroy Israel, who would seek to kill its people and cause undue terror all across the region. This is but one of the 7 fronts that Israel is having to face. One of the more active fronts, certainly at the moment, while there are relative ceasefires, but Israel is preparing in every direction to ensure that it cannot be attacked again in the same way it was on October 7th. And this is critical to the security of Israel, of the Israeli people in this region for, again, we're not just talking days, we're not just talking months, we're not just talking years, but decades to come.
Thank you. This is our final question. Scarlett on Instagram asks, what else can we in the diaspora do?
Scarlett, this is the time to double down on advocacy. This is the time when there is a moment to breathe, a moment of relative calm in this region to come out and say that we need to ensure that this does not happen again. There are ceasefires right now, but I want to make something very clear. There is not peace. Whether we talk about Gaza and Hamas in Gaza, whether we talk about Lebanon and Hezbollah, whether we talk about the Iranians, the puppet masters of it all, or any of the other 7 fronts that Israel is currently fighting for, you in the diaspora, and I'm speaking to you directly, you need to be advocating for Israel. You need to be ensuring that every country you live in understands that if you wish to fight for democracy, for Western values, for the liberal order of the world as a whole, as we've built it, you need to be ensuring that there is an ongoing pressure to tell the likes of Hamas, the Iranian regime and others that their sort of barbarity, their sort of atrocities will not be tolerated around the world. Do not let others attempt to demonize Israel and its activity to fight for democracy. Ensure that you understand, and your leaders, whether that be writing to politicians, whether that be talking to neighbors, whether that be advocating on social media, you can stand up as citizen spokespeople and inform the world of the realities of what's happening. Israelis wish to live in peace. They wish to live in security. Our greatest goal right now is the normalization of ties with our neighbors. What a goal, can you imagine? To develop some sort of normalcy and stability so we can exist and coexist with our neighbors in this region. This is the goal of Israel right now, and you in the diaspora can help by speaking up loud and proud with your voice every single day. All right, well, that is all we have time for, so I want to thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow, 3 p.m. Israel time, 8 a.m. on the East Coast. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.